I'm on. Okay. This is a new view of principal earthquakes. New information. I'm going to put it in 3 sections. This is the first section. There is a cycle that is 100% accurate for 95% of the cycle. In other words, in this case, it's 18 out of 19 years. It's about 100%, no, it is 100% accurate for showing when principal earthquakes are not triggered. And here's how it happened. There's always a starting point. This is the starting point. I was doing some studies that had to do with my church. And I was always taught, in this particular belief that I have, that you needed to prove things. So I finished doing that, a couple hours of study, and like any person, when you're completely worn out on one, I picked up something that I thought was light reading. In this case, it was a book about phenomena on the earth. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, you name it. And, And the book was called Earth Shock. It's by Andrew Robinson, 1993, and this is the page that I saw. I'm going to have my helper here tell me when I go up or down so you can see it good. Okay, so that's a copy of the page. There were 6.5 and up earthquakes on the San Andreas fault system. Okay, and what I found was a key. And the key, I'm going to bring this up. The key is that individual earthquakes were actually running in multiples of 19. So it could be 19 or 38 or 57, 76, 95 years in between. It sounds impossible, but this is the way it worked out. So in 1838, there was an earthquake up here just south of San Francisco. Alright. The time cycle later, in 1857, Fort Tejon, or Tejon, depending upon how you pronounce it. I'm an American, sorry. 1857. Then it skipped for 5 entire cycles. And in 1952, 95 years later, it went off again. Another cycle, and it went off in 1971. Now one more cycle, it went off in 1989. And the reason that doesn't say 1990 is it happened in October. The earthquakes, of course, don't know anything about our Roman calendar. What they know about is the cycle of the sun and the moon and the earth. And I'll get into that later. That was the first one. There were others that I noticed, and I want you to notice this one next. In 1899, there was a 6.4, just below a principal earthquake, which I had to find. One cycle later, 1918. Then look at how many cycles. And I don't know if this will show down here, but this is my opinion after looking at the others. 1956, there was another earthquake. And so again, this time you're adding 38 years or 2 cycles, and it went off. Then it skipped again for another 2 cycles until 1994, Northridge. What I found is they're going off on individual segments. Okay, now let's go to additional segments. On these additional segments, let's start up here up north. 2 separate segments, but they're far enough north that they apparently go off on the same, what we call apex, or what I call the apex year. The apex year is when it would be triggered. 1868, 2 cycles later, 1906. Now let's go down to a different segment. In 1812, there was one here. Southwest of Lompoc, I believe it is. And this one's near Santa Barbara. And of course, again, you're looking at 95 years, 5 cycles, I believe it was. And then from 1927 to 2003. That's a long stretch. And you've got a number of cycles in between it. Cycle after cycle. Now here's the original one that I spotted. I wanted to come around to this. 1968 and 1987. 1 cycle apart. Then later I found one for 1948 and also one for 1892. And again, you have from 1892 to 1948, 2 cycles. From 1948 to 68, notice 1948 would not be accurate, it'd be a year off. But this happened like in December of 48. So that counted as 49. Again, the Roman calendar is not what you're looking at. You're looking for approximate time cycle of 19 years. Not 18.6. That's a different cycle. Okay, and so you have them in a row. Here in the coast, now here in 1933 there was one that was only a 6.3. You had another one in 1800. And I'll get into why I think some of them are less. This one didn't go off. It wasn't a 6.5, so it wasn't counted initially, but I believe these are all in the same segment. Okay, now I want to move this out of the way. And we're going to recount it looking at this. The 19-year cycle is called the Metonic cycle. And the Metonic cycle is made up of 235 lunar cycles. Comes out exactly 19 years. What you're looking at is an unusual thing, that individual segments would be in effect triggered, and triggered on their own particular year, or set of years, I guess you'd say. But I have them in a list here, and for the sake of anyone watching this so you can see it really good, I think that'll fit. Yep, assistant says yes. Okay, you can see the sets of earthquakes and how accurate they are. How accurate? Well, in 200 years of history, all of them have been working on the 19-year cycle. All the segments that I can find in the San Andreas fault system. The interesting thing, as you go from one set, yeah, I have the others, on the back, are that there are a number of sets or segments, all firing in the same way. All of them. Okay, now following to make sure that I show this. Okay, so with a 19-year cycle, you have the locked segments of the fault. And you have a key, a 19-year key. But what does that mean? See, 99% of the scientists out there don't believe there's a cycle. They call it, they have a real fancy name, periodicity or periodicity. But this proves otherwise. And the USGS is like trying to deal with water. You put your hand in it, you can't get a hold of it. Okay. This covers the first section. It should get your attention that there's actually a 19-year cycle. It shows that the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun are in fact the triggering mechanism for earthquakes. And so now on to section 2.